Welcome to our presentation on how to set up the 123Sync server as a Windows service. A couple of points before we start. The Windows service portion of the 123Sync is only available in server configurations. So if you have a client and one user client version of the software, you cannot set it up as a Windows service. Make sure that the 123Sync is working properly in the interactive mode before you set up the Windows service. Makes your life a lot easier. Also, when you run it as a Windows service, the 123Sync will only process the enabled users. These are the users that are checkmarked. So if you want to keep any users out of the sync or in the sync as a service, you just make sure that they're unchecked or checked. And when you set it up to run as a service, you tell it to run at program intervals, and it uses the login name to which it was installed. And finally, we keep a log of the sync, and this log is called pcrmlog.txt, and it can be found on the application data folder in your documents and settings. And when we install, we create a folder called 123Sync 2011 for this particular release. And every time we sync, we write the status information to the pcrmlog.txt file. This file can be opened with a standard text editor and for analysis. And last but not least, we have a tool that is installed when you install 123Sync that allows you to install or uninstall the service, as well as set up the frequency settings and manage the synchronization process. So let's get started. Go to the Start button, Programs, the 123Sync, and there's the Sync Server Windows Service. Then just click on the 123Sync Server Service Installer and Management. So now that we're into the 123Sync Service Management interface, we go to Tools. And in Tools, there's Install and the Uninstall the Sync Service. So we click on Install, and that will install the service and register it on the Windows machine. While we're here, we set the timer to how often we want to run it. Make sure that you set the timer and that you save. That will save the data for when the sync service will start. Your next step now is to configure the Windows side and then get the service started. To do that, we go to Start, and we've got a shortcut to the Windows Explorer. On the Windows Explorer, you go to My Computer and click on Manage. On the Manage, click on this, go to the Services, and you will see here that here's our service, 123Sync 2011. So what we have to do now is to set up the login name. So you click on Properties, go to Log On, and you have to set the login name. In our cases, we call it a test. And then we put in the password. In this case, we have a short password. And we apply. So you now log in as the login name that you set up 123Sync servers. So we also come up here and we say automatic. So if you have a system reboot, the service will start automatic. So you can click on apply, and from here, so now we can just click on start the service, and the service is started. So now let's just go back to the Sync Server Management interface and use one little tool just to check that everything is fine and that the service is working. What we see here is that we started around 2 and the service has been scheduled for 2:23. So it's always gets scheduled half an hour after we started. If you click on sync now, it sets the time to the current time, and the sync service will then start on its own. But the way to check that everything's been set up properly, click on the open sync log. What happens is we have a log that we maintain, the pcrmlog.txt, and here it will tell you when the service started. So we can actually look at 157. That's when we started the service, and then that will tell you what the version number of the service is, and it will tell you when it's scheduled for. So this will tell you that the service is operational now. So if we click here and we go sync now, that will set the time to sync. So if you click on start refresh, and we actually can just refresh right there, and now it's syncing. We've seen here, we started here, and it's syncing Chris Huffman, which is the one that we got set up to sync. And we'll show you the context as they're syncing. And we've got a group syncing on this one. So by analyzing the log, you can actually see whether the sync is working or not. And we put informational data in this log that you can then, if you have any issues or if anything happens, you can always there and look. So now what we see here, the synchronization is complete, and the next time it will synchronize it at 2:32. You can just stop the refresh of the log, and you can just go and then analyze if you have any errors or anything is happening that should not be there, and you can then just see. But basically, the sync now is run. So just one final tip when you're setting up the sync service. If you open the sync log and you get an empty screen, there's nothing there, that means there's been a failure on the sync service on creating the sync service itself. And this failure we write to a file that you can actually analyze and see what the failure is. So if you go to Windows Explorer and click on My Computer, we write to the C drive, and there's a folder that we create when this happens. It's called 123 sync messages. And in the log here, we'll have the error that we encountered when the service came up. Usually these errors are you entered the incorrect login for the sync service. About 99.9% is that error. So it will tell you that you cannot find the folder, and then you have to just re-enter the login for the Windows Sync service. To finalize our presentation, the Windows service is only available on server configurations. Make sure that 123 Sync is working properly before you set up the Windows service. It will only process the enabled users. Make sure that you use the correct login name. And also sync status information are available on the PCRM log file that we put on your system. As a matter of practice, regularly clear the log file so it doesn't get too long. And if you are reinstalling or uninstalling 123 Sync server, make sure that you uninstall the service first. That will remove it from the Windows registry and make the uninstallation much better. Okay, again, thank you for participating in this demonstration.